So how long have you been a writer?
Uh, in one way, all my life. I've always scribbled poetry and little stories when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought of being a writer until when I was in college. But I wrote a couple of poems for a college magazine and thought, and they published it. So I thought, oh, I really would like to do this, but it's such an insecure field for earning a living, and I already was studying to get my breadth requirements and then go on to go into the teaching program because I knew I wanted to be a teacher. So I thought, well, I finished college, and then for a while I worked in clerical work to pay off loans before going back for my credential. So during that time, I joined a writers group after school, a night school, and enjoyed it quite a bit and felt very motivated to write. And so I would write pieces and actually send them out, but I had so much to learn, and I thought, well, I'll just do this through the years, and down the road when I retire, then I'll retire to be a full-time writer.
Wow. So how old were you when you were first published?
First published, no, oh, well, in the magazine, in the
At
college
the college.
magazine.
Well, that's a publish.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. That was my first publication, and I was 22 then.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's young.
yeah. Well, actually, there were people in a writing program at San Francisco State that were younger than me. So, but I really wanted something sensible that would earn a living when I went to college because my mother was an opera singer that never quite made it.
Wow.
And always ended up with the jobs that she really didn't train for. So I thought, well, I'm not going to go that route. I'll save the creative full-time commitment for retirement down the road. I'll do it on the way, but I want a nice, secure career that and I really love teaching, so that was a good match. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it because a lot of people that are creative don't think that way down the road,
Oh, yeah.
They just go for their passion and they don't plan for things. And you were able to do both.
Well, I feel very lucky, very blessed, yeah. Because then I got seriously published when I retired from teaching. I got some stories published, and I was about 56 then. And I got my first book published, I guess, when I was in my 60s.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, and there's so many people out there that think, oh, I should have done this or should have done that, and they never do it because they think they should have done it and not now.
The beauty of writing is it's not very expensive, okay? Because when I was writing, you just needed a tablet and a pen. Of course, now you need a computer, but even then you need a computer almost for everything now, so that's your major expense. Whereas if you're an artist, art materials are very expensive, and you need an easel, and you need brushes, and you need all kinds of things that are costly. So, yeah, it was very fortunate because I could just write off and on all my life.
Wow. And another question is that I'm curious about too, and I'm sure other people might be, is what motivates you to pick up the pen? Like, what really gets you rushing to write something?
It's well, I do a lot of scribbling in a notebook in my purse too. But what motivates me? It usually an idea will come to me if it's a story. And for a long time, I was writing short stories, not books. But like a scene will come to me, or sometimes a dream will spark an idea. And then for poetry, sometimes it's just a line will come to me, where I'll think of a line, and then I want to think of the next line and where is that going, and I'll kind of scribble out a very, very, very rough draft of a poem.
Wow. And how do you distinguish whether it should be a line in a poem or it should be a scene or part of a scene or part of a dialogue in a book?
That's such an interesting question. I don't know. Because a lot of first lines of poems could be an opening line in a story, too. And I used to write down, I had a little notebook where I would write down first lines that came to me. And usually, though, it was the first line for a story or a scene or a book. And I had no idea where it would go from there. So I've got all these little first lines that I think would be a great opening line for a story, except there's no story there.
Yeah. So you create the story. So good question. Leading into another question here is that how do you decide what's going to lead you into the story? When you go into the story off of one scene idea or one particular idea, what motivates you or what takes you in the direction of what you decide it will be about? Do you change it a lot, or
Oh, yes.
you do? Oh, yeah.
But when I'm writing a first draft, it's usually, if I start off with something, then it's basically what happens next question, or what if, she turned the corner and there was, but, well, that's an interesting idea, and then just kind of pursue it. And sometimes it's a dead end, so you just drop it and go back to, well, I really like that line, but what if I went this way with it instead,
I've heard the what if question twice, so it seems like that's a really important one for you.
It is a big
Takes
one
you in
like
directions.
and the other one is what comes next. So what happens
comes
next? I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Let's find out if you can expand on that.
Well,
That
there's
process.
it's been said there's two kinds of writers, plotters and pansters. And plotters always know where each scene is going. Yeah, I mean, there are really serious plotters that plot the whole book out. And I tried that once, and it just didn't work for me because I lost all motivation to write the book once I had plotted it out. But because I'm what they call a pantster, you sit down by the seat of your pants, you get an idea, and you just go where the idea leads. So basically that's it's basically finding out what comes next,
Yeah.
and usually you need a character that you are kind of drawn into. You want to know what happens to this character next, and what would this character do, really, not what would I do. I have no clue, but what would this character do?
That takes some real creative, almost channeling, like kind of ability. It sounds like you're not looking at it from your own perspective. You're looking at it from a fictitious character's
Right,
perspective, which is, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think a lot comes through your unconscious. You've put together so many things as you go through life that's all in there, like a rubbish bin. And if you need something, it's like your mind goes over and kind of peeks in and pulls out something that is kind of compatible with what you're working on. But it's very interesting. Your characters do take on a life, because on my most recent book, Deadly Verse, it involves a bookseller. Well, it involves the granddaughter of a bookseller that has an antiquarian bookshop. And I needed more information about him because he's entirely made up. I mean, he's inspired in looks by someone we met in Braga, but that's it. And his shop is inspired by the shop we went in. That's it. I made up the granddaughter. Okay, so here we go. A little bit later, I'm trying to figure out what would happen, and well, what would the grandfather think about that, I wonder? And I thought, believe it or not, I thought, I'll ask the granddaughter, she'll know. And then I thought, no, I won't. I made her up. She doesn't exist.
I love it.
I know, it's crazy.
Well, she exists somewhere, right? Yeah.
In here, kind
Yeah.
of like around the corner and back there.
You created this whole mindset of this person you could call on. And so what did she say?
Oh, well, no, I thought, I realized.
Oh, you didn't
I had
ask
to-
her?
No, I didn't ask her. I had to figure it out for myself. What would he do? What would he think?
That's really sweet. I love that.
And I'm not the only writer that has gotten so involved in their book that parts of it seem real to them, and then they remind themselves, no, it's not. This is my story. I made it.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Coming up with a character and that sort of thing has got to be somehow real to you to be able to carry it and travel with it through your writings. How about style?
I never relate to the idea that I have style. I know I belong to a really good writing group, although we've kind of moved on from critiquing first chapters to actually waiting and writing a whole first draft of a book. They're very good.
Wow.
Very good feedback, and they get the whole story, and by then you've got your story out. But one of them said that I had a recognizable voice in my writing, and I still don't quite understand that myself. But every time I read writing advice, they say you need to develop your voice. So it made me happy that someone seems to think I have a voice, but she never did say what that voice was, But I guess just a recognizable way of telling a story that she can tell it's one of my stories and not somebody else's,
That's really valuable. Yeah, that's a real valuable thing to develop and to have to let come through.
But I think that just
Sounds-
comes naturally. The more you practice, the more you write. You start writing in a particular way that makes it flow better for you. But I've since then I've wondered, like, can I tell another author's voice? And I suppose it's what I mean when I say I really like the way they use language, or I like their turn of phrase. I like the way they do things. I imagine that's their voice that I'm admiring,
Yeah, I think when I read something, I like to read something that's enticing and enchanting somehow, and but it has to be at a certain rhythm for my brain to really want to keep reading, So I've read some things by authors that were like very slow or very, you're taking me over here now and I really don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I just want to go there. Dance me down this path, And so, yeah, it's really nice when you can be able to, when you've developed your talents as you have, to be able to lead someone and dance them down a path.
Well, that's a nice way to put it, because as soon as you said that, I thought of an author I like, Cindy Sample, that writes very humorous mysteries. And I just know that I'm going to be smiling a lot when I read her books,
I'll have to read that. That
And
sounds
M.C.
good.
Beaton is another one. She has a detective series, Hamish Macbeth in Scotland. And there's just something so humorous about the way she says things. And I suppose that's voice.
Yeah,
And I do
it's
like
like
some dark stuff too. There are some dark stories I've liked in heavy novels. And I admire, it's the same thing. I know the author's going to do an excellent job with it. So it's like I trust this author's voice, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, I like that. You develop a trust for this author's voice. Right now, in your development as a writer, are you thinking of doing anything out of the context of what you've done before? Or are you taking on anything new? Or...
Many authors, I won't say most, but many, they stick to one genre.
Mm-hmm.
But I seem to be attracted to different genres. So I have a collection of children's stories, The Carnival of the Animals, which is for children of any age. And I really love that book.
Even my age? Even my age?
7 to 70 is what I say. Because it's layered and it's got references to things that adults would like, but it's fairy tale type stories that little kids would like. And then I have written a middle grade mystery involving Sherlock Holmes. It takes place in Victorian England. I loved writing that.
Wow.
And I want to write another one. And I have an unfinished novel that for some reason, and I keep getting stuck in it, but I love it and I want to finish it. It's a middle grade historical novel of an Irish Catholic family in Sacramento in 1919 when the flu, influenza was raging.
Spanish flu?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And just the tail end of it, and which plays a big part in their lives. And then I do write poetry. I've had one chapbook published, and right now I'm submitting another around.
Wow, great. And what is the name of your poetry book?
The one that's published?
Uh-huh.
It's a Portuguese term. Saudade. Saudade. 30 poems of longing. And saudade is like a Portuguese term for a state of heart, so to speak, that longing or homesickness or nostalgia. I mean, it's a very complex combination of feelings that get mixed into it that's very typically in the Portuguese culture.
Uh-huh.
And there's a song form called fado, F-A-D-O, that Portugal is very famous for, and they have many famous fado singers. And it's music. It's been called the Portuguese blues, but it's nothing like the beat of the blues. It's really a distinct art form of its own. It's beautiful, just beautiful.
Wow.
It's very haunting.
Ooh. People that have inspired you along the way to write, or how to write, or how you want to write, or like influences. Any people that influenced you?
Oh gosh, so many.
Maybe not in a major way, but at a pivotal point that just was so valuable to you.
Well, I think when I took after the night class in creative writing workshop,
Mm-hmm.
we had a very good teacher for it, and it was, I think it was free or maybe $3. It was just,
Wow.
this is
Way back.
long ago. Marcia Saban, and many of us formed a writing group out of it for a while. We had mentioned that when we went on later and had writing classes, that she was one of the best that we had ever had, and she just did it. She did it in the evenings at this high school in a night class, and we took it I think we took it for 2 or 3 years from her. She just had a great approach that made me feel like I really was a writer. I think for the
Wow.
first time, I still realized I was going to wait till I got a teaching credential and go have a teaching career before I tried to do anything full time. But when I was taking that, I sort of felt for the first time like, yeah, you know what? I think I really am a writer. I'm sure she made us all feel that way, you know. It was the exercises she brought to class and books she advised us to read. And she was one of the early ones that I read this advice everywhere, and I give it, that if you want to write, you have to read. And so she would, bring a bunch of books and have us each pick one and go home and then come back and share what we got out of it, both as a story, just insights, human insights, and as a writer.
So it sounds like she just assumed you were all going to be writers, and that was that.
But, well, she taught us like she thought so.
That's great. That's really great.
And
Because
actually, let me see, two went on to actually publish, and then me. Okay,
So three of you.
three of us went on to be published.
Nice. Is there anything that you'd like, any advice you'd like to give anyone, any age?
If you want to write, write. Just always, even if you don't expect to be doing anything with it for a while, just write something. Write a journal. Write down thoughts. Keep a little notebook of ideas, but write. And the next is read. Read everything. And I mean, I'm not the first person to say this, but read everything. Not just what you expect to write, but everything. It's good to get a good writing group, but you might have to shop around because you want to make sure you don't end up with a bunch of people who think they're New York book critics, and just think they're there to criticize. You really want to find readers that support what you're trying to do, encourage you, but don't hold your hand. They let you know what isn't working for them in a nice way. Like they might say, I get how she felt when she saw so and so. What I don't understand is da 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 da. And get those kind of writers because then you're building each other up, but you're there to improve each other's work. Not just say, oh God, you're a wonderful writer. I couldn't do a thing to this. They should be able to do something to it, but in a positive way. They're also great for catching typos because after you read your stuff 20 million times, you don't see mistakes anymore.
Right.
So a good
point.
writing group is great. Yeah. And then the other thing is just, keep on keeping on and keep on enjoying it. Write what you want to write. You may never get published. I may never get published again, but I love what I write, and I write what I love.
So you would be happy, even if you didn't get published, you'd be really happy with what you wrote.
That's right.
And
I would.
key to
I'd be
being
sad
a
now
really
not to
good
get
writer.
published because I've gotten used to it. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I just know that something would go flicking through my brain, and I'd have to reach for a pencil and start writing that down.
Well, thank you so much, and I want to give you a little surprise question here. It's called the secret question. So,
Well, I
go
do want to
ahead.
say how much I've enjoyed this interview,
Well, thank
and I
you.
really thank you for doing this. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, I wrote a story when I was 5. Okay, but I assume you don't mean that one.
Sure, whatever you choose.
Well, not
You
that
get
way.
to answer this any way you want.
Okay, and you want me to answer it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was a poem. It was the poem that was published in the college paper, and it was about a person with waking. Is it waking from a not so aware life? And I think it appealed to me because that's what college meant to me.
Wow.
It really was. It was so refreshing to have teachers that said they didn't know things because, coming up through the public school, teachers always seem to know everything. And I was getting professors who confessed they didn't know certain things. And but encouraged us all to open our minds and learn something new. So the poem kind of was inspired by that, I think.
Wow, I love that. That is a great answer. College is not that awakening to probably most people. It's more along the lines of pressure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that was fascinating that you got that out of it and shared it through a poem. That's great. That's incredible. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It
Well,
was so
thank
nice
you.
doing this interview with you.